بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا آمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. It's good to see you all, inshallah. So, my name's Yahya. I'm just a person who studies history. I've just done a just start off with who I am. So, I've just got a personal interest in history. I've done a diploma in it, in Islamic history, and I'm trying to work towards, inshallah, a degree in it, inshallah. So I just thought, I know Monla Musa, he's the one who's kind of behind this kind of program. And he was saying that he'd like for me just to do kind of a history section. So um, one of the people I really enjoy is the Umayyads. And so, yeah, I thought we'd go through that. Just a bit of housekeeping in terms of how I like to do things. I really like it to be interactive. So when I was taught history, even online and stuff like that, my teachers always be really interactive with me, and it's all about challenging. I think that's what history is about. So because we're talking about the Umayyads as well, we're not talking about the Khulafa al-Rashidun, and I'll explain these terms if anyone's not aware of them. We can probe, we can criticize, we can kind of analyze. So I don't mind if people want to have their kind of mics off constantly. If some people want to even like talk to me face to face with camera on, I'm completely fine with that. But the point I want to try to make, sorry, is that please challenge and criticize if you want. If you don't agree with something I say, put your point across. As long as we do it with good adab and with speaking in a nice way, I'm absolutely fine with that. This is not an echo chamber, so please don't come here and think that I'm just wanting you to agree with everything I say. So let's just move on to the title first. So the title, I think, is quite a bit provocative to some people. So it's the Umayyads, God's inheritors of earth. And the reason why I put that title was because that's how they very much saw themselves. So because they were at a time when they came after the Khulafa al-Rashidun, they were the only caliphate which was a khilafah which was running. So they could have that title of saying that we are the ones who are taking over fully. When they end, and then the Abbasid regime comes afterwards, there's competing empires coming after that. So I thought that was really kind of a bit of a powerful kind of statement to make God's inheritors on earth, because that's how they kind of saw themselves. Okay, before we begin, does anyone have any questions? Anything they want to challenge me with? Anything they want to, anything you know about the Umayyads at all? Put it in the chat. You can speak up. I prefer it if you people like speak, because honestly, like it's really good to kind of engage. But I appreciate it if you don't want to. It's okay if you don't. I'll just keep the chat. Yeah, just so I can see it. Okay. So I also have, it's good that I think there's around 26 people, which is really good, mashallah. So I actually have a challenge for you all, a prize. So this is a book by Imam al-Suyuti called The History of the Umayyads. And I thought to myself that whoever in this kind of program over this week and next week is like, alhamdulillah, turn up on time, if you engage well in the chat or in person, you can win a free book of Imam Suyuti's History of the Umayyad Caliphs. And at the end, inshallah, I'll send it to Mullah Musa and we can get it delivered to you. So it's just a kind of motivation just to kind of keep going. Apologies if you already got the book and you win, let me know. I can give you a different one on the Umayyads, but that's a prize for anyone who kind of wants to work towards it. Okay, let's get started then, inshallah. So, the structure for today is, and if you ever can't hear me, please let me know in the chat. If there's something going wrong, please let me know. So, we'll just talk a few credits because I'm using some things from other people. We'll talk about why we're doing the Umayyads. We'll talk about Banu Umayya and their conversion to Islam. We'll talk about the backdrop to the caliphates of Uthman radiallahu anhu and Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. Okay, you can hear me clearly, alhamdulillah. And the rise of Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. And then we'll have Q&A. But just like I said before, this Q&A, I would really like that if that happens all the way throughout the lecture, throughout the talk, because I think it's really interesting when we engage and when we kind of debate about history. But there's a Q&A at the end if you'd like that as well. Yeah, fine. Okay, so some of the slides have been taken, a lot of the slides, sorry, have been taken from my teacher, Ustad Ibrahim. He runs the YouTube channel, History on History UM. He's running two courses currently, an Umayyad history one and a history of the 20th century. So it goes through all of the decades from 1900s, 1910s, all the way to 2000. And you can get access for it for £10 a month. So, oh, sorry, just reading something in the chat. Is it thorough in bit of the necessary? I'll come to that question. That's actually quite good. So you can get access to it for £10 a month through signing up via Patreon, and check it out if you wish to. So this is his channel. Some of you may be aware of it. And you just go on here, and if you go, I think, into these 5 more links here, you can go onto Patreon and you can kind of join it. Honestly, it's just a wonderful series. Mashallah, he's very, very thoughtful. So there was a question in the chat. It said, is a thorough or even basic knowledge of the era of the Khulafa al-Rashidun necessary? I think it would help. It would help. You can certainly study it by itself, the Umayyad dynasty, but you won't understand the finer details without the Khulafa al-Rashidun, sister. So I would definitely agree with that. But even if you've come into this talk, for example, with no knowledge of the Khulafa al-Rashidun, don't worry. You can still study it without it. It just maybe won't make a lot of sense. Some of the parts won't make any sense. That's all. And it kind of helps you to kind of join the dots together if you know about the Khulafa al-Rashidun. In fact, as we'll see in this talk today, inshallah, we're actually going to go before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's how far we're going to go back to understand it. So, inshallah. Okay, so before we go, I just wanted to say, empty thy cup. So what I mean by that is if any of you have studied history here, and if you studied the Umayyads before, we come with a lot of baggage sometimes in terms of we have preconceived notions of the Umayyads. We think of them in a certain way. So my request to you all is, if you have any of that within you, is to let go of it and get rid of any kind of bias you have in your head, and let's try and give them a fair go again. Okay? And I just also wanted to say, please don't get offended if we talk about anything in today's or next week's lecture, for example, which makes you feel uncomfortable. I think that's the purpose of history. It makes you feel uncomfortable. My intention in this is to always speak in a respectful manner because of the Sahaba involved, and Muawiyah radiallahu anhu is a great companion, absolutely. But there are things after that and to do with them which may be a bit shocking and which may trouble your notion of Islamic history and Muslims. That's fine. But this is the wrong lecture if you want to talk about the Umayyad and you don't want any controversy. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. Okay. So I wanted to ask you guys, you can put it in the chat or you can talk to me, whichever you guys like. Why did you choose the Umayyads? Mashallah, there's around like 25 people here, 24 people, I think. So why did you choose the Umayyads? I think this is an interesting, just for 5 minutes or maximum 5 minutes, just have a little bit of a discussion. Why the Umayyads? I'll just look at the chat. It doesn't have to be something super technical. I hear they were part of the golden era of Islam. Okay, that's quite interesting, that golden era of Islam. Can I ask, Brother Musa, what do you think about them was the golden era? Like, what about them was the golden era? Might be easy. I don't know if you, might be easy for you to talk it or just to say it, but I don't mind. You can type it as well. Based on how they spread it. Oh, okay. Based on how they spread Islam. Okay, that's really, really interesting, actually, because the Umayyads were notorious for not spreading Islam, not being great proponents of making people, converting people to Islam. Yeah, sister, I think the golden era is the Abbasid era. Yeah, that's quite interesting. So, kind of, Brother Musa, on how they spread Islam, if you're talking maybe in terms of conquest, that would be true. But in terms of conversion to the religion, I think the Umayyads are very difficult to argue in that sense. They actually weren't really big on converting people to Islam. I think the golden era is the Abbasid era. Okay. Can I ask then, just as you said, the Abbasid era, how do you view the Umayyad era? Is it like a silver era? They prefer to have dhimmis due to jizya, if I call. Yeah, you're very correct. They prefer to have dhimmis, absolutely. Yeah, due to the jizya. Using era. Yeah, they were, absolutely. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. That's fine. Thank you. A confusing era. Yes, it can be quite confusing. Absolutely, they can be quite confusing. They're kind of a bit difficult to grapple with. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, mashallah, it's really, really good good insights there. Okay, we'll move on then. So, okay, why we made history. So, first thing is it's a departure from the utopian, idealist, and romanticist projections onto the Muslim past. So, what I mean by that is sometimes we see history as a Muslim history as a golden age. Okay, I know why we sometimes talk about golden ages because we love our history, we love Muslims, but in my opinion, just from what I've studied, I don't think there is such thing as a golden age for two reasons. Number one, because when we talk about a golden age, we first have to define what we mean by a golden age. Okay, and everyone's definition is different. What Sister Anisa, I think, was talking about in terms of a golden age with the Abbasids is technology, scientific revolution, inventions. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's what we're referring to when we talk about the Abbasid age. But my definition of golden age could be um, leaders adhering to Islam and people adhering to Islam, right? So in that case, my golden age could be the Khulafa al-Rashidun. But no Western historian really will say that in their books, that the Khulafa al-Rashidun was the golden age of Islam. They wait till the Abbasid era to give that title. Why? Because their definition of it is science and technology. So that's why I don't believe such thing as a golden age exists. And number two as well is we can always romanticize things in terms of talk about how Baghdad during the Abbasid era was so wonderful for its technology and inventions. But they would do, but we can't negate the fact that there were some horrible things that they did as well. And so everyone's human. So that's kind of the point of this, just to make sure that we don't think of Muslims as in this romantic way. Um, Bridging the knowledge gap and sharing the instruments of historiography. So yeah, so there is sometimes a bit of a knowledge gap with the Umayyads. We don't know too much about them, um, and the reason kind of why I think there's sometimes a gap in them is because it's quite interesting. The information of the Umayyads was mainly written after they ended. So it's quite important actually to bear that in mind that the history of the Umayyads was written by people who came after them. So you can see that there'd be some bias in there as well. There's a question, brother. Did they outlast the Abbasids? No. So the Abbasids came after the Umayyads. They actually toppled them. If you want to say did they outlast, I mean, they did carry on in Spain. So when they were taken down in Syria and Damascus, they then one guy called Abdul Rahman from the Umayyad family still survived, and he moved into Spain from 750 onwards. Um, but no, I wouldn't say it's correct to say the Umayyads outlasted the Abbasids. The Abbasids very much took over from the Umayyads and outlasted them. A concise yet elaborate precursor and prerequisite to the rest of Muslim history. A bit like how Sister, I think, Anisa was asking before. Do I need to know the Khulafa al-Rashidun to know the Umayyads? In a sense, kind of, yes, to get the full understanding of them. And to understand the Abbasids, you have to understand the Umayyads. Okay. Um, we have access to the slides. Yeah, inshallah, yeah, that's absolutely no problem for me. I'll tell Marwan Musa. I'll actually give them to them. That's absolutely fine. I wanted to ask you all a question just to understand why history is important. I don't know the age of people here, but I'm sure people will remember. In 2015, I think it was 2015, a guy called Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi in Mosul in Iraq got up and declared the caliphate. Okay. He was the leader of ISIS. Okay. Does anyone know what he was dressed in? How he was dressed? Anyone got any idea? How was he dressed? How like what color was he dressed in? Does anyone know? Black. Excellent. He was black. Excellent. Why was he dressed in black? Give me a moment. I know it's difficult to type. The Abbasid color. Okay, yeah, it's the color of the Abbasid. That's it. Why is he dressing now in the color of the Abbasid? You're correct. It is the Abbasid color. So why is a guy in 2015-16 dressing up in the color of the Abbasids when he's declaring a caliphate? Iraq connected to the hadith about the black flags. I suppose the problem with the hadith about the black flags is obviously that talks about Khurasan, I believe. Did he want to bring Iraq connected? Okay, yeah, maybe it is connected to the Abbasid slightly, yeah. Did he want to bring the Abbasid era back? You're close, you're kind of on the right lines because he's connecting himself to the Abbasids because the Abbasids started a revolution of overthrowing the corrupt Umayyad government and bringing a new one in. So when he gets up in black in Iraq, in Mosul, absolutely Iraq is connected to the Abbasids because they have their capital in Baghdad, absolutely. But he's saying that, look, a revolution is beginning now. A new caliphate is coming. We have overthrown the corrupt people, and the new caliphate is here. So you can, if you don't understand history, you wouldn't understand why in 2015, 2016, a guy dressing up in black. The history though comes from the 700s, 800s, but it still affects us today. I find that quite interesting. Was he? I have no idea if he was a CIA agent. That's for someone else to talk about, really. I'm not sure whether he's. Okay, it's also just going back to the slides. A relevant source of case studies with historical precedent for current days events. We've just talked about that, right? That it's absolutely relevant, this history, to today, and we'll talk about that a bit later as well. It's really relevant, this kind of stuff, to what's happening today, especially in Gaza and Palestine and stuff like that. And it's the beginning of Islamic Muslim history proper. It's open to critical analysis and examination. Okay. Okay, let's move on, inshallah. Okay, so before you understand the Umayyads, you have to understand the people who came before them. Okay, so we're going to start with a man called Qusay. So I'm sure, in case people don't know, Qusay is a descendant, sorry, ascendant, came before the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Okay, so you can say it carries on Qusay ibn Kilab ibn Murrah ibn Ka'ab ibn Lu'ay ibn Ghalib ibn Fihr. Fihr here is Quraysh. Okay? So Qusay is a descendant of the Quraysh, and the Prophet ﷺ is a descendant of Qusay. So it's quite interesting what this man does. So we'll have a read of it. So Qusay reunified his people and established a kingdom in Bakka, i.e. Makkah, in the year 440 CE. His clan were invited to reside in Makkah, where they took residence and settled indefinitely. King Qusay established the first Qurayshi dynasty and came to be known as the Mini Quraysh for his accomplishments, i.e., replicating what Fihr had done before, because Fihr is Quraysh. Dar al-Nadawa was the legislative headquarters and palace of King Qusay, occupying very central and critical administrative functions, including al-Nadawa, al-Hijaba, al-Qiyada, al-Liwa, al-Siqaya, and al-Rifada. These are all just different jobs which they would do. Okay, so King Qusay basically united the Arab Peninsula, okay, and he unified it under him, and he got control of everything. Qusay ibn Kilab maintained his authority as the king of Bakka until the end of his life, having successfully reinstated the Ismaili Adonite hegemony and ruled over the city for the first time since the era of Ismail and his two eldest sons, Nabdan and Qaybad. We're not going to go into the history of the Arabs, so like the Adnanite Arabs are. That's okay. You don't need to really know about that too much. But it's important to remember that this King Qusay, he was a I want you to okay, let's go on to the next slide. So any questions? Yeah, I'll just keep an eye out if there is. Right. Something very, very interesting, okay, is going to happen with this story. Now, we've got King Qusay at the top. Seems to be a lag. Okay. Is it okay now? Yes. Okay. Sorry, just let me know if there's lag again. I'll try and change the internet connection. Um, so I want to take you forward now. Okay. Just repeat your last post. Okay, one. You know what I'm going to do? Just give me a second. Let me just pause the share. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah. Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to change my internet connection. You'll just have to, sorry, just bear with me for 2 minutes. I'll just change my internet connection to something very reliable. My hotspot, basically. Okay, just give me 1 minute. Okay, sorry, can you hear me? And can you share? Can you? Sorry, yes. Okay, excellent. Jazakallah. Sorry about that. Okay, I'll repeat the last point. What I was just trying to say is that we know about King Qusay now, and we know that he reunited the Arabs. Okay, and he was an ascendant of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I want to take you a bit forward now to the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and Abu Sufyan. Okay, Abu Sufyan. Okay, I'm sure you guys, mashallah, there's I think some very knowledgeable people here. A lot of you will be aware of the hadith when Abu Sufyan, radiallahu anhu, because he becomes the companion, goes to meet the king of the Byzantine Roman emperor, okay, in Damascus. Now, in that long hadith, there's many questions the king asks Abu Sufyan. One of the questions he asks him um, is there anyone in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's ancestry, okay, who was a king? Abu Sufyan says no. Okay, that's very important. This is when Abu Sufyan is not a Muslim at this point. Okay, he says no. However, if I was just to take your attention now to this family tree here, Shayba is Abdul Muttalib. Okay, so as you can see, there is a connection to King Qusay. Okay, can anyone think in the chat? Why do you think Abu Sufyan says no? I'll explain it to you anyway later. I'm just wondering if case people know about this. Why does Abu Sufyan say no? The Prophet ﷺ does not have an ancestor who was a king, when there is a king here, King Qusay. Anyone think? Does anyone know why? Why would he say no? No, that's okay. That's fine. Okay, so you'll see now, inshallah. So King Qusay, okay, became the king. Now, when he wasn't a Muslim yet, and his purpose was to mean Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yeah, demean the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yeah, absolutely it is. But um, the thing is, if he was doing it to demean him, in the hadith, the other questions he answers truthfully. So, for example, when Abu Sufyan is asked, who follows him, he says, the poor people, the people who don't know much. He goes, and the king says, yeah, that's really good. That's people who are prophets. Did that, like. So he does answer truthfully and gives credit to the Prophet ﷺ in other questions. He may have thought it gives him legitimacy. Oh, that's actually, yeah, that's a really good point. Um, that could be one point. The only thing is again, is maybe I just answer that in the same way, is that he answers well though, and he answers good and positive about the Prophet ﷺ in other questions to the king. So I suppose that is giving a bit of legitimacy in that. And also as well, the Prophet ﷺ never um, kind of made the claim of being a monarch, being a king. So I suppose that kind of wouldn't help him too much because the Prophet ﷺ didn't say he was a king. But I understand your point. It's a really good point, actually. It's a really good idea. So let's go through this. So we have King Qusay here, and when he comes to the end of his life, he likes his eldest son here, Abdul Dal. Okay, and Abdul Dal, okay, is not the most competent though, but he's loved by his father, King Qusay. So what happens is when Qusay passes away, Abdul Dal gets the rulership of the lands of Medina, of Mecca and Quraysh. He takes over Quraysh. However, when Abdul Dar is alive, everyone loves Abdul Manaf. He's called Al-Mughira, okay? Because Abdul Manaf is very kind of competent. He's very honorable. He's like, that kind of very kind of competent, kind of well-mannered person who everyone likes and loves and thinks that he really kind of should be in power. So, when Abdul Dar is coming to the end of his life, okay, Abdul Manaf has four sons because he's quite elderly as well at this point. Amr al-Ula, who's also called Hashim. Okay, this is Hashim here. Abdul Shams, Al-Muttalib, and Nawfal. Okay, now something very interesting happens when Abdul Dar is coming to the end of his life. The people of Quraysh split between who should be in charge next. A group says, well, we'll say what it said Abdul Dar should be in charge, so his sons should be in charge. But another group say that Al-Hashim and the brothers here should be in charge because Abdul Manaf is really competent and his sons are excellent as well. Hashim was a very excellent man. So they divide into two groups actually. One group, okay, which the group which backs Banu Hashim, Hashim and his brothers, what they do is very interestingly, it's in the Hadith, I think, as well, is they go and they get a bowl, okay, of perfume. And what they do is they dip their hands in the perfume and they rub it onto the Kaaba. And they're called the scented ones because of that. So they kind of swear and say, with this scented and with my scented hands and running on the Kaaba, the walls of the Kaaba, they say, we're going to back Hashim. Then the followers of Abd Dar say, okay, we're going to go one up. So they get a bowl of blood and they dip their hands in blood and they wipe it on the walls of the Kaaba, saying, we're going to do this till the very end. We're going to shed blood and go into civil war if it needs to. So what happens though eventually is it's almost about to break into civil war, but a peace deal is agreed with Abdul Dar's sons having some kind of responsibilities and Hashim and his brothers having another one. So one of the main things which Hashim does is looking after the well of Zamzam. Sorry, not well of Zamzam, it's not found yet. Sorry, giving water to the people on the Hajj and also giving bread and stuff like that. That's incidentally where his name comes from, Hashim. Hashim comes from Hashama. So it means to grind bread because he would grind bread and he would give it to the people who came on Hajj. MashaAllah, he's a very, very honorable man. Okay, so we're on Hashim now. Let's just concentrate on Hashim. Hashim has a brother called Abdul Shams. Okay, now there's a myth, I don't think it's true, that when Abdul Manaf had Hashim and Abdul Shams, that they were born together as conjoined twins. And what happened is, I think Abdul Manaf then got a sword and he chopped their heads like halfway in between, and they were kind of separated from birth, and that was kind of a omen that they were going to be rivals. I mean, I think it's mythology and made up, but that's just there if you want to know about it. Now, something very interesting happens. Abdul Shams and Hashim get along quite well. However, Abdul Shams has a son called Umayya, okay? And Umayya is a very ambitious man. So Hashim is very popular. He gives a lot of money out, he gives a lot of food out, he's very caring and things like that. And Umayya is looking at this. Let me just actually do it like this. And Umayya is looking at this, okay? And he's looking at this and he's saying, look at this. Hashim is going to get all the fame and glory and prosperity in this world. What am I going to be left with? Like, what are we going to be left with here? Like, we're getting left out here. So what he does very interesting, is he challenges Hashim Umayya, okay, to like kind of like a challenge, like a kind of a duel kind of thing. And Hashim at first says, look, just sit down, I don't want to do this, it's going to break our family ties. But it gets to such a point that what happens is that he's advised Hashim that you have to deal with this challenge because it's quite serious and you can't just knock people off. So Hashim says, okay, I'll accept this challenge from my nephew, okay, but there has to be some rules so that this doesn't happen again. So Umayyad agrees. So Hashim says, whoever loses has to pay 50 camels in reparations, kind of like as a punishment, and they have to leave the Arabian Peninsula for 10 years in exile. Okay, so Umayyad agrees as well. They have a kind of a battle, a duel, and Hashim wins comprehensively, crushes Umayyad, and Umayyad pays the 50 camels and he leaves. Does anyone know where he leaves to? Can anyone guess? Where do you think he may have leave? He may leave to? It's a city. It's a city in Arabia. Yathrib. No, he was told to go outside of the Arabian Peninsula, so he couldn't go into Yathrib. But that's a good guess. Actually, goes to Damascus. Why is that relevant? Can anyone think? Why is that relevant that he went to Damascus?
Because then the Umayyads, the base was Damascus.
Excellent, well done. Yeah, mashallah, well done, brother Yusuf. The Umayyads' base is in Damascus, and he goes to Damascus. Okay, so it can make you actually think of why the Banu Umayya had such a link with Syria and stuff like that. Okay, right. If we move the slide on, okay. So this is Umayya here from the last slide. Yeah. So we just follow on his family tree. He had two sons, Abu al-As and Ahad. We're just going to focus our two lectures are just on this, okay? Because these become the Umayyad Caliphs. We're not going to worry about this side of the tree here. Okay, that's maybe for another day, inshallah. Now, it's quite interesting because we have Abu Sufyan here, don't we? Okay. Now, remember how I said to you, I asked you the question before, why would Abu Sufyan not want to give the credit to the Prophet ﷺ for him having ancestry in his king? Okay. It stems from this. So when Umayyah has that battle with Banu Hashim and that challenge, from there becomes a rift. There's like a tear in the fabric between Banu Hashim and Banu Umayya. If you remember, and we'll come on to it, of when Abu Sufyan accepts Islam, it's after the conquest of Mecca. There's a reason why he accepts it so late. There's a reason why he can't accept that Prophet that Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib ibn Hashim has said that he's a prophet. Can't take it that Banu Hashim have gone going to get this superiority. Okay, so it's really important to remember that there's a reason why that actually happened. So it's quite deep. People don't, maybe it's not appreciated enough. This rift between Banu Umayya and Banu Hashim. So I just wanted you to note that. So these three here, and we're going to study Muawiyah radiallahu anh today, they're called the Sufyanids. Okay, the Sufyanids, like that. And the reason why they're called the Sufyanids is because they descend from Abu Sufyan. So Muawiyah radiallahu anh, Yazid the first, and Muawiyah the second, they're all called Sufyanids because they're from Abu Sufyan. So just bear that in mind. Also, just bear it in mind as well, if you come through here, Abu al-As, he had a son called Affan, and that's Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anh. Okay. Any questions about that, please just put it in the chat or just let me know. Okay. Right. Let's move on then. So we talked about Abu Sufyan and the Prophet ﷺ. Let's come to the end now of the Prophet ﷺ. We're getting now to Muawiyah radiallahu anh and the conquest of Mecca. Okay. Now we talked about, I just mentioned that one of the reasons why Abu Sufyan then accepts Islam at the conquest of Mecca, why he only accepts it so late, is because of this rift between Banu Hashim and Banu Umayya. It's really, really important to keep this in mind. You won't understand what's going on unless you keep this in mind of Banu Hashim and Banu Umayya. There's this rift between them. Abu Sufyan eventually accepts it. You know, he can see the writings on the wall with the conquest of Mecca. He decides, right, I'm going to accept it. I'm going to follow the Prophet ﷺ. But it's just unbearable for him. Okay. Now, once he's accepted it, though, okay, before that it was unbearable, but he accepts it. Okay. He insists on a position for Muawiyah radiallahu anh, his son. Okay. And again, you have to understand now, why is he doing that? The reason why he's doing that is because Banu Umayya were always in the high positions. In Mecca, when they had that consultation, and the senior people in Mecca, who Abu Jahl, and Abu Sufyan is one of them because he's from Banu Umayya. Banu Umayya always needs to have a position at the top. So when he converts to Islam, Abu Sufyan, one of the first things he says is that, "Can you give my son a position?" Yeah? It's actually very interesting. On the conquest of Mecca, one of the ways how the Prophet ﷺ tries to honor Abu Sufyan and kind of placate him is he says, "Anyone who enters the house of Abu Sufyan will be saved." And now you can understand why. Why would the Prophet ﷺ do that? Because Abu Sufyan is from Banu Umayya and they're known as this aristocratic, very kind of high-ranking nobility. So, the conquest of Mecca happens, and does anyone know what role does Abu Sufyan get, or what role does Muawiyah radiallahu anhu get? What does Abu Sufyan manage to get for him from the Prophet ﷺ? Any ideas? Scribe, excellent, well done. He's a scribe of the Quran, excellent, well done. And along with that, as well as a scribe of the Quran, he also gets him as a khadim of Rasulullah, which is kind of tied into what you're saying, Brother Yusuf. Yeah. Khadim means like a servant, just someone like run errands for him. But yeah, he was a scribe of the Quran, excellent, well done. And he gets that through Abu Sufyan kind of asking that for him. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Okay, now we're getting into it. Okay, so let's talk about. So the Prophet ﷺ passes away in 632. Okay, and he's brought the Arabian Peninsula under his control mostly. Okay, then I want you to ignore the yellow, please. Okay, so ignore this. This is not relevant to our discussions. Okay, at the moment, so ignore all of this. Okay, then it's just time permitting, unfortunately. We can't talk about Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhu. I mean, just wonderful people, wonderful times to talk about, but we can't. And so under the Khulafa Rashidun, you can see in orange that what they do, it's just nothing short of amazing. So Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, just if anyone's interested in dates, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu rules from 632 to 634. And then after him comes Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu. He rules for 10 years. He rules from 634 to 644. And now, so I'll put sorry, for Umar radiallahu anhu. And now we're going to come to Uthman ibn Affan. Okay. So he rules from 644 to 656. Okay. Now things get a bit interesting. Before we get into Uthman radiallahu anhu, something to bear in mind is this map here has Syria as the modern day Syria. Syria, though, in this day of the Khulafa Rashidun meant this. Okay. So you see how I've included Jordan, Palestine, kind of Lebanon as well up there. This is all Syria. Okay. Now, under the Khilafah of Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu, firstly, okay, someone called Yazid ibn Abu Sufyan, so not Yazid ibn Muawiyah, his son. Yazid ibn Abu Sufyan gets the governorship. However, he passes away in the plague, and so after that, Muawiyah radiallahu anhu is then given the governorship of Syria. Okay, and he's given the governorship of Syria in the year 641. Okay, so 641 AD. Muawiyah radiallahu anhu is given the governorship of Syria. It's a good question to ask. Why Syria? Why would Muawiyah radiallahu anhu get Syria? The reason why that is number one, they were from Banu Umayya, which meant they had a very kind of good upbringing. They were very intelligent. They were given an education of sorts. They could read, they could write. Abu Sufyan was a scribe. Number two as well, because Banu Umayya had a lot of connections with Syria. Remember we talked about Umayyad going to live in Damascus. But not only that, they were big traders with the Roman Empire as well. Yeah, Abu Sufyan would regularly make trade deals with Syria. If you remember at the Battle of Badr, that the Prophet attacks a caravan which comes from Syria, which is Abu Sufyan's. Okay, so they had links with it. If you think all the way back to the Battle of Badr. Okay, so in 641 under Umar's rule, Muawiyah radiallahu anh becomes the governor of Syria. When Uthman radiallahu anh takes over in 644, he keeps him in power. Okay, because it's his cousin. If you remember from the family tree, it's his cousin as well. So everything's going okay until the year 656 AD. Okay, in 656 AD, Uthman radiallahu anh, unfortunately, is assassinated in his home. We don't have the time today to go into why that happened. If any of you are interested, you can go read about it in like Imam Suyuti has a really good book, History of the Khulafa. You can go and read that. But Uthman radiallahu anh is assassinated in his home whilst we're reading the Quran. Now, I just wanted to say, what I'm going to say now, I'm talking about the companions, so I'm very wary of that. I'm just going to say what happened. I'm not giving an opinion on it, okay? I'm just going to try to tell you what happened, that's all. So after Uthman radiallahu anh is assassinated, in Medina here, so Medina is here, yeah? Oh, sorry, that's kind of more Makkah. Sorry, let me do that as Makkah. Sorry, Medina would be more right here. So in Medina, Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh is given the Pledge of Allegiance. So he rules from 656 and he's end his rule in 661, unfortunately. We'll see what happens to him. So when Ali radiallahu anh becomes the Caliph in 656, he rules from Medina. However, he has to then deal with some problems and some kind of antagonism against his rule. The first one comes from Aisha radiallahu anha, and again, that's something you can read about with the Battle of the Camel. The second thing he deals with is this, okay? I'm just going to try to summarize it in kind of the easiest way that I can. Uthman's assassination was a horrible, horrible event, okay? Now, for any of you, does anyone know, just whilst I put my... Does anyone know what happened to Umar ibn Khattab? How did he pass away in 644? I'm just trying to build a narrative here because if you don't get the narrative, you won't really understand it. Yes, he was assassinated. Do you know who he was kind of assassinated by? Yeah, excellent. Yeah, Feroz. Yeah, it's Feroz, excellent. And he's like a Persian kind. He was a Persian, so it was a non-Muslim. So that's why when Umar radiallahu anh passes away, yeah. Oh, just get rid of someone. Sorry. Yeah. So when Umar radiallahu anh passes away, it's something the Muslim Ummah can deal with because he said that this is how I want the succession to go. And it was a non-Muslim. He was dealt with and they moved on. So excellent, well done. However, with Uthman radiallahu anh, it's not as simple because they were people who followed Islam, Muslims who killed him. In fact, if you read the books of history, it's quite shocking. One of the sons of Abu Bakr, Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, is actually involved in that to kill him. Okay, so it's very, very shocking times. So when Muawiyah radiallahu anh hears of this, it's his cousin who's just been slaughtered in Medina, just killed violently in his home. And what happens is Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh is trying to stabilize the empire. And he has a problem in that his main supporters within them, okay, is the people who did what they did to Uthman radiallahu anh. Okay? It's not just three people. People try to simplify this time by saying it was just three people who killed Uthman. There may have been three people who went in to kill him, but the plot was much wider. Some people, unfortunately, were unhappy with Uthman radiallahu anh's rule. That's kind of a discussion for another day to go into the details of why. So when Ali ibn Abi Talib comes into power, radiallahu anh, he has this problem where the people who are backing him, within them, there's some people who were responsible for Uthman's death. So what Ali ibn Abi Talib says to the rest of the Ummah when Aisha radiallahu anha is not too happy about it and Muawiyah radiallahu anha is not too radiallahu anha is not happy about it, is he says to them, let me just stabilize everything. Let me get the Pledge of Allegiance from everyone, and then I'll get after these people and I'll sort them out. But because I'm just trying to give you a bit context to this, because he's not got the Pledge of Allegiance from Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. Ali doesn't get it from Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, he's thinking to himself, I can't do this. I can't turn on my own people and say, right, I'm going to start finding out what's wrong when I've got the main man in Syria not pledging allegiance to me. That's the best way how I think I can maybe try and explain that for you in kind of the most respectful way. So it's this kind of difference of opinion, and when we talk about difference of opinion between companions, we have to be very careful not to criticize, of course, because we love them all, and they're miles better than us. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to sit here at all. A miles better than me, sorry, at least. So I'm not going to sit here and criticize them. That's absolutely not my place to do. But I'm just giving you maybe the thought process of what was going on at the time. So Muawiyah radiallahu anhu does not give the Pledge of Allegiance to Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, because Muawiyah radiallahu anhu is unhappy with how Ali radiallahu anhu has dealt with the assassination of Uthman, if that makes sense. Okay. If there's any questions about that, please let me know. Because some of you maybe might be the first time learning about that. I know it can be a bit shocking to know about this, but fortunately it is the reality of kind of what went on. Okay, I'm just going to move on to the next slide. Right. So there's a lot of things to look at on this map. I just want you to look at a few things. So Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, when he's the governor of Syria, he puts keeps his head capital where the Romans had it as well, in Damascus. Okay, so this is where this is where Muawiyah radiallahu anhu is ruling from. Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu makes a very interesting decision. He decides to move the capital from Medina. So Medina was where Umar and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Umar radiallahu anhu, Uthman radiallahu anhu kept their capital. Does anyone know where he moves it to? Because I don't like talking too much. I want you guys to be involved as well. Where does he move the capital to, Ali radiallahu anhu? Kufa, excellent, well done. So he moves it to Kufa. Okay, and the reason why he moves it to Kufa, I think, is evident when you look at this map here. So Muawiyah radiallahu anhu is in Syria. He moves it to Kufa in Iraq for two reasons. Okay, number one, why he moves it is because there's a lot of supporters there. There's a lot of support here. Okay, in Iraq, they are massive supporters of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. And number two as well, it's just close to Syria. Yeah, so it's just close to Syria. It means Ali ibn Abi Talib can get into Syria quite easily. If you're coming from Medina, you have to march across the desert. Okay, it's not the most ideal place to be going through. So let me just erase this. Okay, right. So Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu moves the capital to Kufa, and in the year 658. So remember, we said Ali becomes the Caliph in 656. In 658, I want you to forget about all the other battles in here. I want you just to concentrate on this one here. In 658, in where Syria is today, I think it's bordering near Iraq, there's a battle called the Battle of Siffin, okay? Near where Raqqa is today. Now, in that battle, something very interesting happens. Ali ibn Abi Talib and Muawiyah radiallahu anhu have a battle, and eventually Ali radiallahu anhu is getting the best of it. Okay, he's winning. Okay, and so you'd think, okay, maybe the caliphate's going to come under his control. And just to give you some context, the green on here is Ali radiallahu anhu, and the pink is Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. Okay. However, just to give you a bit more context, okay, can I change the color of this pen? Yes. In 658, I want to make something clear. It's Siffin. This is all under Ali's as well. So Muawiyah radiallahu anhu is almost cornered in Syria in 658. I want you to bear that in mind because that's quite important. Okay, Ali radiallahu anhu is about to win, but Muawiyah radiallahu anhu is almost trying to kind of salvage the situation. So he asks Ali ibn Abi Talib for a peace treaty and a peace deal. Okay, he says, let's discuss. Okay, there's a narration where he gets the soldiers of his army to put a Quran on the top and hold it up and say, let's make a peace deal and it's called arbitration, is kind of the technical word for it. Now, people misunderstand what happens next. People say Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu made a mistake. They say Muawiyah radiallahu anhu surrendered. I don't think he surrendered. He didn't surrender. He wasn't really, he hadn't lost. He was about to lose. He was just in a weak position. Do you know what I think happened? This is just my personal reading, okay? I'll just make it clear when I'm talking very personally. You know what, Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, he had a heart of gold, honestly. Okay? He just hated, honestly in his heart, he just hated the fact, this is what I think, that we're going to battle with other Muslims. He knew that if I go to battle the next day, I'm probably going to win, yeah, and I'm going to take this caliphate over for myself. But he's just such a pure-hearted, wonderful man, yeah, and companion, that he said, you know what, these people want to stop fighting and they want to get a deal. I'm going to go for that. And the reason why I think that, and the reason why I would back that statement up, is because it rubs off then on his son as well. And we'll see later how it rubs off on his son as well. Okay, so I just think Ali radiallahu anhu was an amazing man. Okay, so at Siffin, they start to negotiate with each other. Okay, but however, there's a group of supporters of Ali bin Abi Talib who, you know, like they were thirsting for blood, right? And they just wanted to make sure that Ali gets the Khilafah, who are really upset and they can't accept what Ali radiallahu anhu has done. They can't accept making a peace deal. They say this is wrong. They said war is just someone should win and that's it. So what they do is, anyone know their name? Who are the name of these people who break away from Ali bin Abi Talib? Very extreme people. The Khawarij, excellent, well done. So there's a group of people, they're called the Khawarij. It comes from Kharaja in Arabic, which means those people who kind of left. They left Ali bin Abi Talib. And what they do is there's roughly around from his army 20,000 people. This is not a small amount, okay? 20,000 men leave Ali bin Abi Talib, okay? And they say that, you know, we can't accept what you've done. You're not our caliph anymore. In fact, they make takfir of him, so they call him a kafir and things like this. Because they believe you can't like make peace deals and agreements like this. You have to fight till the end, just to kind of keep it a bit basic and simple. So the Khawarij run away. Okay? And what happens is, when Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu is negotiating from a position of power with Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, he's now in a position of weakness. Okay? Because 20,000 of his men have left. There's a famous incident where he sends then Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu to go talk to the Khawarij, and a lot of them do come back, but he still has to go and fight them in a battle of Nahrawand. Okay? There's a battle called Nahrawand, and he fights them in there, and it just causes him a lot of problems. The reason why it causes him a lot of problems is because he can't then deal kind of with Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. So what happens is Muawiyah radiallahu takes the time to take Egypt for himself under Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anhu. Okay, so it comes under his rule now. Now, we fast forward now to the year 661. So if we go to the year 661, okay. There's this stalemate going on between Muawiyah radiallahu and Ali bin Abi Talib, okay, radiallahu anhuma. And this Khawarij, after they're defeated by Ali bin Abi Talib, okay, they decide that, you know what, we need to take these guys out. So there's three main people here. Number one is Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. Number two is Ali bin Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. And number three, does anyone know who conquered Egypt? Who's the famous governor of Egypt? He conquered it under Umar. And he was put under it. He was given control by Muawiyah as well. Anyone know his name? Very famous companion. Amr ibn al-As, excellent, well done. Amr ibn al-As. So Amr ibn al-As is in here, is in Egypt. Okay. Now, the Khawarij, what they decide to do is they set a date and they get the main big three guys and they say, on this date, we're going to kill Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, Ali ibn Abi Talib, and Amr ibn al-As. Okay, so it's very, very kind of dangerous time to be around here. And unfortunately, this is also, this would be this sounds horrible to us that some people would, what I mean, get together to kill these three men. But that's the reality of the world, unfortunately. And they only succeed in killing one person, Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu. They fail on Muawiyah and they fail on Amr ibn al-As. So in 661, the blessed son-in-law and cousin of the Prophet ﷺ, Ali ibn Abi Talib, is coming into the mosque of Kufa one day for the Fajr, and a man from the Khawarij comes with his sword and hits him in the head with it and slices his head open. It said, Astaghfirullah al-Azim, and it's difficult to talk about, to be honest. So that happens in 661 AD. So in 661, okay, Muawiyah radiallahu anhu becomes the undisputed ruler. So if I erase it all, if I get now no pink really, so I'm going to go with orange. This all comes under his control now. Okay, basically, apart from Iraq, okay, there's a reason why we're not going to include Iraq in it. Take this out. Okay, so he gets a lot of the land and he becomes the ruler of it. Does anyone know? So he doesn't get Iraq. Who's in control of Iraq now when Ali radiallahu anhu passes away? Who's in control of Iraq now? Now that Ali ibn Abi Talib has passed away. Any ideas? Not Abu Musa. That's a good guess. I can see why you say that because he was involved in that time. Al-Hasan, excellent, well done. Radiallahu anhu. So, Al-Hasan radiallahu anhu. Okay. Just going to explain what happened to with Al-Hasan, and then we're going to move on to the next slide. We're not got too much left of it, inshallah. So, Al-Hasan becomes the Caliph in 661 AD. Okay? He's chosen by the people of Iraq. Now, what he does is something completely wonderful, which really is underrated in Islamic history. He's just a wonderful man. And again, like I said about how wonderful Ali ibn Abi Talib was, his son was the same as well. Let me tell you what he does, and then we'll kind of analyze it. Hassan radiallahu an, when he becomes the Caliph, Iraq is furious at what's happened to Ali, right? He's just been assassinated. So the people of Iraq say, we're going to join you, Al-Hassan. They said, we are going to join you, we're going to back you. So it said Al-Hassan got an army of 80,000 men. Some reports say that 80,000 men he got to go and fight Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. Now what happens is they meet near the border of Iraq and Syria. Muawiyah radiallahu anhu brings his men and Hassan brings his men. And then one of the most incredible moments in Islamic history takes place. Al-Hassan radiallahu anhu goes to Muawiyah radiallahu anhu and he says, I've had enough. Okay? He says, I've had enough. He said, I've seen what's happened during my father's time. I saw what it did to my father, how it made him exhausted. He was so tired, and then how he met his end. He said, I'm going to give you the caliphate. I'm handing it over to you. What an incredible gesture. But there's a very important condition which we need to put in here. He didn't hand it over to him for free. Okay? Al-Hassan said to Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, okay, he said, I will hand it over to you, but there's a condition, he said. Okay? Does anyone know what the condition was? What was the condition that Al-Hassan gave to Muawiyah radiallahu anhu? That I will hand it over to you, but this has to happen. If it's easier, you can say it as well. I know it could be a bit much to type it. There's a very excellent, well done. Al-Hassan radiallahu anhu said, after you pass away, Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, I become the next Khalifa. Okay, so it goes back to Banu Hashim. Sorry, right. So it goes back. The Khilafah goes back to Banu Hashim because Al-Hasan is obviously from Banu Hashim. Yeah, because his father's Ali ibn Abi Talib, his mother's Fatima radiallahu anha. They're all Banu Hashim. So it goes from Banu Umayya to Banu Hashim. That was the condition. Please bear that in mind. That is so crucial for what happens later on. We're not going to cover that today, what happens with that, but it's so important to remember that condition. Excellent, well done. Is there any questions about that? Because that was a lot, and that was a lot to take in. Any questions, any thoughts? Anyone disagree with what I've said? Like, feel free to prod and question. Even any comments that you want to say, like, that made me feel like that or anything. Or are we okay to move on? I'll just give you a minute because I think that can take. That was quite a lot, which we did. No questions or anything? No, that's fine. So let's move on then. So this is how. Why is information like this not normally known? Okay, that's a great question. Let me go back to the previous one. I understand why it's not normally known. It's a very difficult part in our history, and people want to sometimes keep the companions' status in a certain way. And I kind of sometimes are inclined to agree with them that this is not for everyone. So see how, mashallah, in this lecture, I think there's about 21 of you, 22 at the moment. So that's because you're interested in history and you want to get to the bottom of what happened, you want to understand it, especially with what's happening in the Muslim world today. Everyone knows how important history is, right? Especially what's happening in Gaza and Palestine and stuff. This is not known because this is not something I think which should be talked about all the time. It's a difficult part of our history. It's controversial, it's bloody, it's messy, it's politics at the end of the day. Okay. And I think this is something which should just be known by people who want to know about it. When you look at the books of history from the scholars, this is all there. No scholar of Islam who wrote about history covered this up because they knew that it was important to be honest and open. That's the wonderful thing about our tradition. But I understand why this is not in every syllabus. Like in terms of they say, yeah, you know what, this year everyone must learn about Siffin and the Battle of the Camel, the Battle of Siffin, the Battle of Ali and Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. It should just for people who kind of want to know about it. I don't think it should be part of a course where it says, we're going to teach you the basics of Islam. Welcome to the Battle of Siffin, if that kind of makes sense. I just don't think that's the right thing to do. I think for people who want to know about history, this then should be taught to them. But I just don't think it should be something. And the thing is, I think, sorry, I don't know your name because it just says iPhone. I think the thing is that not a lot of people are interested in history in terms of generally. So it's not got a massive appeal. So that's why it's not maybe as well known. I hope that kind of makes sense. That's how I view it anyway. Yeah. Jazakallah, absolutely. Barakallah fiqh. And you can disagree with that if you want. So you can disagree with that. Okay, here's how Ibn Khaldun looked at it. Ibn Khaldun is a very famous scholar from the 14th century. Okay, he's got a great book called the Muqaddimah, which you can read. Okay, and he's basically a great analyst. Okay, he says this. He says regarding the great fitna, which was the fight between Muawiyah radiallahu and Ali ibn Abi Talib. He says Muawiyah's intentions, were not bad ones. He wanted the truth, but he missed it. Ah, okay. Each was right insofar as his intentions were concerned. Now, the nature of royal authority, which means that kingship, requires that one person claim all the glory for himself and appropriate it to himself, which means like take it all for himself. It was not for Muawiyah to deny himself and his people. Wow. What a minute. What a statement. That's by Ibn Khaldun, by the way, not by me. Not by, I don't want to offend anyone here or anything. Not by like a Shia or anything, yeah? That's by Muawiyah, that's by Ibn Khaldun, a mainstream Sunni scholar. Yeah, that was his view on it. Okay, you'll see why he kind of came to that way. So he's saying that Muawiyah radiallahu anhu kind of had to go for it. It was not for Muawiyah to deny himself and his people. He kind of takes any kind of shift of blame off Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. Very interesting way of looking at it, I think. Okay. Right, I just wanted to show you this picture because this is now the Umayyad Caliphate. This is what Muawiyah radiallahu anhu basically brings together, okay? So you can see how it stretches all the way into North Africa here. This is where Tunisia is today. This is like Libya, and then moving into Egypt here. And then you can see here it moves into, this is kind of where like Iran is today, pardon me. And then here it's like Afghanistan and places like this. So it's a massive empire even in Muawiyah radiallahu anhu's time. Okay. We're doing well for time, inshallah. We'll finish on time, inshallah. We're nearly there. Okay. And I'll try and finish a bit early because I know this is quite difficult sometimes to listen for long times. Right. Let's talk a bit about Muawiyah radiallahu anhu now. He's got the caliphate, yeah? What kind of what kind of man was he? He says, radiallahu anhu, I did not cease to desire the caliphate after the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to me, Muawiyah, when you rule, do so with excellence. And this is from Ibn Abi Shayba, yeah, in the Musannaf of Ibn Abi Shayba, it's in At-Tabarani, it's in Al-Kabir, yeah. So Muawiyah radiallahu anhu says this. He says, I wish to rule the Khilafah. Okay? Very interesting man. Very interesting man. Here are some virtues of him. So he's called the Khosrow of the Arabs. So Khosrow was the Persian emperor. Okay, so he was kind of known as this very royal, kind of royal person of the Arabs, if you want to look at that. He was a scribe of the revelation. He wrote the Quran down, mashallah. That's an incredible virtue to have. What a position to have. Khadimul Rasul. So he was the servant, kind of the errand boy of the Prophet ﷺ. Again, very high status to have, right? He's narrator of 163 hadith. Yeah, he narrates from Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Habiba radiallahu anha, radiallahu anhum. And then he narrates to Ibn Abbas, Ibn Umar, Ibn Zubayr, Abu Darda, Nu'man ibn Bashir, and Ibn al-Musayyib. Yeah, he's called the uncle of the believers. Yeah, and he's the brother-in-law of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sorry, I'll just come to your question in a second. He also has something called Daha. It's called political finesse. He was the most trusted governor under the Khulafa Rashidun. I'll give you an interesting statistic. Muawiyah radiallahu anhu is the only man to rule through the reign of Umar bin Khattab when he was the Khalifa. When Umar bin Khattab was the Khalifa, he's the only man to rule and never be replaced. All other governors, there were some issues brought up against them, and Umar radiallahu anhu either sacked them or he decided to replace them to keep their honor. This man never had that problem, radiallahu anhu. And he had something called hilm, forbearance. Okay? I'll give you a quick story of his hilm. It's very interesting. When he was the caliph, he was such a patient man. He didn't want like political civil war. He didn't want civil war to break out. So when people would come to him, he would let them talk however they wanted. They could abuse him, insult him. He wouldn't really do anything. He would just keep the peace. One time, his daughter comes in and she says to him that, you're the Amirul Mu'mineen, you're the Khalifa of the Muslims. How can you let these people talk to you like that? So he says to her, okay, go behind this curtain and just have a listen listen to the next guy. So he brings the next guy in, and it's someone from Iraq. And Iraq, as you know, has a kind of the issue, they were backers of Ali bin Abi Talib, if you remember, yeah, and Hassan radiallahu anhu. So they didn't really like Banu Umayya too much. They were kind of against them. So what happens is he says something. Muawiyah radiallahu anhu says to him that, well, because he says it in a bad way, this guy. He says like maybe in a rude way. And Muawiyah says to him, radiallahu anhu, in a way that, okay, if you don't if you don't sort yourself out in terms of how you speak, then I'll sort you out. And the guy who he said that to, the guy who Muawiyah radiallahu anhu said that to, he said, okay, He goes, if you want to threaten me like that, he goes, I've got people in Iraq who are ready to sort you out as well. And then the narration says that his like daughter can't handle it. She opens the curtain and says, "How dare you speak like that to the Caliph," and stuff like that. But then he talks to her at the end and he says, "Do you see what I mean?" He says, "Do you get it?" He goes, "I prefer that they insult me, yeah, rather than they draw their swords." He knew that the way of the political atmosphere in the caliphate at that time was very unsteady. Yeah, he knew it could implode, right? Because he knew that the people of Iraq were very much against him. Because remember, we said the Umayyads were based in Damascus, in Syria. He knew the people of Iraq were against him, so he just tried to placate them all the time. He used to give lots of bribes, like lots of money to people. He used to do a lot of that just to keep them placated. So he had a lot of him. He was a genius in that way. Yeah, absolute genius. Sorry, we had a question. How was Muawiyah radiallahu anh such a good leader in terms of traits wise? Oh, okay. Well, I mean, in terms of traits, you kind of got it here. It was just, I think I answered that unintentionally already, right? It was just a genius in the way how he did things. He knew how to rule. Some people are cut from a cloth of knowing how to rule. If you think about it as well, he grew up under Banu Umayya, right? His father was Abu Sufyan. He grew up with power, luxury, wealth. But he also would have had the opportunity to study things and be in positions of power before. Right? So he learned, and he may have learned some things off his father as well. Okay? And when he, like I said to you, when he became the governor of Syria, 20 years he ruled it for Syria. Yeah. So just I'll put the dates on again. He goes from 641 to 661. He's the governor of Syria. 20 years he rules for. No rebellion, no civil war, not removed under any caliph. Okay. Then he becomes the caliph 661 to 681. Another 20 years roughly, yeah, or 680, depending on how you want to do it. 19 years. Again, no rebellion against him. After he joins with Hassan radiallahu anh, there's no rebellion. The man was a genius in terms of being able to keep people placated and to manage things well. He didn't turn people up the wrong way. I hope that kind of answers your question. Okay. This is just a timeline of things. I will give you the slides, inshallah, so you can read this in your own leisure. What we've done is we've got up to, inshallah, here. Okay? Here, we've got up to with Muawiyah radiallahu. What we'll do, we're just going to do one or two more things. We're just going to talk about one or two more things. And then next week, we'll start from here and we'll finish Muawiyah radiallahu very quickly. And then we'll talk about Yazid, his son. And then that's it. We'll kind of done that. We'll do that. So this is all the dates which you want. Okay, if you want to dates, you can just have a look at that. I'll just move on. Okay, Ibn Khaldun says he was the first king. So when Umar radiallahu anh went to Syria and was met by Muawiyah in full royal splendor, as exhibited both in the number of Muawiyah's retinue, retinue means the people that he had with him, and his equipment, he disapproved of it and said, "Are these Kisrawiyya or Muawiyah?" It means that these are the clothes of the Persian emperor. Muawiyah replied, radiallahu anh, "O commander of the faithful, I am in a border region facing the enemy. It is necessary for us to vie with the enemy in military equipment." Umar was silent and did not consider Muawiyah to be wrong. The first to use a throne in Islam was Muawiyah radiallahu anh. He asked people for permission to use one, saying that he had become corpulent. For anyone who doesn't know, corpulent means slightly overweight, a bit fat. So Muawiyah radiallahu anh kind of is the first one to bring, is the one who kind of brings this in, this idea of intimidation of the enemy through this kind of royal splendor and dressing up well and things like that. And it's not wrong. It's absolutely not wrong. Umar radiallahu anh did not chastise him for it. Okay. So it was also another achievement of his was the navy. When the Muslims took possession of Egypt, Umar bin Khattab wrote to Amr ibn al-As and asked him to describe the sea to him. Umar replied, "The sea is a great creature upon which weak creatures ride, like worms upon a piece of wood." Yeah. Sorry. So thus he recommended at the time that the Muslims be kept away from seafaring. No Arab travelled by sea save those who did so without Umar's knowledge and were punished by him for it. Umar thus punished Al-Fajr, the chief of the Bajila, for doing that. He sent him on a raid against Oman, and he learned later that he had raided it by sea. He disapproved of his having made the raid by sea and told him so in no uncertain terms. Thus it remained until Muawiyah's reign. He permitted the Muslims to go by sea and to wage the holy war in ships. I mean, there's a difference of opinion on this. Some people say Uthman radiallahu anhu formed the first navy as well because he conquered Cyprus. So it might just be it's just a difference of opinion, really. But you can see some of his achievements. Okay, the last thing we're going to talk about is what did Muawiyah radiallahu anhu introduce? How did he change from the kind of the caliphate into this kind of kingship? So quickly go through it. So this is what Ibn Khaldun mentions in his Muqaddimah. He says the first thing he had was he introduced Muawiyah radiallahu anhu was al-hajib, a gate guard. Kept petitions away from the gates of the caliph, keeping petitions, away from the gates of the caliph's court was something the religious law forbade, and they did not do it. However, when the caliphate changed to royal authority, i.e., when Muawiyah radiallahu anhu takes charge, and when royal forms and titles made their appearance, the first thing the dynasty did was to bar the masses from access to the ruler. Okay? This is going to become more evident. We're going to tie in why he would do this later on, just in a couple of slides. I'll leave this for a moment. So he brought a guard in called a hajib. A throne. The first to use a throne in Islam was Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. Okay? So he started to sit on the throne. Okay, al-Khatam. The first to introduce the sealing of letters, that is the use of signature, was Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. He also introduced the ministry of the seal. Now, what some of you may say correctly, but didn't the Prophet ﷺ stamp things, seal things with his ring? He did. That's absolutely correct. But what it is that here is more of the use of a signature. Okay, that there was an official signature of Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, because obviously the Prophet ﷺ couldn't write, and also as well, Muawiyah radiallahu anhu made it like an official seal. The Prophet ﷺ was just an informal one, right? That he would just use his blessed ring. But Muawiyah radiallahu anhu brought a kind of proper official kind of branch of government, which was to do with the seal. Does anyone know why Muawiyah radiallahu anhu would have been so paranoid? Well, okay, maybe paranoid is a strong word, but so worried and kind of receptive towards the idea of introducing a seal. It has something to do with Uthman radiallahu anhu's death. Does anyone know? Very interesting if you know this. Letter was intercepted, excellent. And do you know, Sister Anisa, who it was said had written the letter? Excellent, Marwan. Now, we're not going to cover Marwan ibn Al-Hakam. We're going to talk about him actually briefly, okay? But he actually was the caliph later. But yeah, there was a letter which Uthman radiallahu anhu was meant to have written. And some, Imam Suyuti, for example, rahimahullah, says that Marwan's writing was on it. And when they said to Uthman, is this yours? He said, no, I've not written, this is not me, this is not my writing. They say it looked like Marwan's writing. So Muawiyah radiallahu anhu said, I'm not having that happen to me again. He goes, I saw what happened to my cousin Uthman radiallahu anhu, that because someone forged a letter perhaps in his name, that he met his death. He goes, that's not going to happen to me. So he introduced a royal seal. Excellent, well done. Okay, this is perhaps maybe one of the most controversial ones. Al-Maqsura, the enclosure for the ruler to pray in is a lattice screen around the prayer niche, the mihrab. So this is the prayer niche. This is the mihrab here. And the space immediately adjacent. The first to use one was Muawiyah radiallahu anhu after the Khawarij had stabbed him. Okay, so remember how we talked about the Khawarij tried to assassinate Amr ibn al-As, Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, and Ali ibn Abi Talib in one day. After that time, what Ibn Khaldun says is that he got a bit paranoid. And he said to himself, I don't want that to happen anymore. Okay. It was also said that the first one to use was Marwan ibn Al-Hakam after a Yemenite had stabbed him. So there's a difference of opinion according to Ibn Khaldun who did it. But this is why then Muawiyah radiallahu anhu would pray in his protected space. Very interesting. Very interesting that they would do that. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, I just have a question. Okay, the last bit. How many rightly guided caliphs are there for you guys? You put a number in the box. Huh? Number in the chat. How many rightly guided caliphs are there? 4, 5, 5. Any yet other numbers? With Hassan, okay, so 5 with I assume you mean 5 with Hassan radiallahu anhu for 6 months. Okay, yeah, okay, right, 5, 5. Okay, so we've got 4. Oh, okay, yeah, sorry, with Hassan. Okay, yeah, yeah. So 5 is basically the answer. Okay. Ibn Khaldun disagrees with you all. Okay, he says the 6th righteous man, 6 if you include Umar ibn Abdul. Okay, he still disagrees with you. AK, he says Prophet ﷺ said the caliphate after me will last for 30 or 31 or 36 years. Sorry, I should have maybe tried to get the source for that. I'm not sorry about that. But it ends with the caliphate. This is what Ibn Khaldun says. It ends with the caliphate of Hassan and the beginning of the caliphate of Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. The beginning of the rule of Muawiyah is a caliphate only according to the original meaning of the word. Okay? He is the 6th of the caliphs. The 7th is Umar ibn Abdul Aziz. That's incredible. So Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, Ibn Khaldun is saying, oh, there's this hadith here. It could be 36. So it means Muawiyah radiallahu anhu is included in it. So he actually believes Muawiyah radiallahu anhu is a rightly guided caliph. So he says he's the 6th rightly guided caliph. And he says the 7th one is Umar bin Abdul Aziz. Only one person from us all at a stretch said there were 6. Most of us agreed with 5, and I think that's the mainstream. A lot of people agree with that there's 5. But Ibn Khaldun says 7. And he says Muawiyah is included in it, he said. Okay. I'll just take this question and then I'll ask you a question and then we're almost done. Just a question came to my head. If Hassan radiallahu is part of the rightly guided caliphs, why don't we mention in the khutbah? Well, we do. We do mention him. We mentioned the 4. We mentioned the 4 rightly. We mentioned the first 4 because they ruled for longer and they were kind of had an actual kind of effect. But we do when we say Wal Hassan wal Hussein Sayyida Shababi Ahli Jannah. So I suppose in that sense we do. In terms of I maybe understand what you're saying. You're kind of saying why don't we have something specific for him inside with the other 4? I think it's just because he didn't really rule. And because he didn't really rule, we don't kind of put him in there. But that would be a great question to ask like a mainstream scholar and see what he says. You know, the khutbah is very interesting. I'll just move on to the next one here. We're at the end now. So this is the last slide. The khutbah is very interesting. You know the last bit of the khutbah, إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي. Does anyone know who added that in to the khutbah? Or why it was added into the khutbah? Does anyone know why that was added into the khutbah? I was shocked when I heard this. I didn't know this for a long, long time. I had no idea. Because that's always how we end khutbah usually, right? I know there's some slightly different narrations. You can say it on chat, by the way, because I don't know if it's difficult for people to type. I don't know. I'll just give you like 10, 15 seconds. Clue. Yeah, it's to do with the Umayyads. Okay, there's the clue. To do with the Umayyads. It's to do with a practice that the Umayyads started. And it's a horrendous practice, by the way. It's a horrendous practice. Anyone got any ideas? It's to do with the khutbah. Anyone any idea? Just shout it out if you want. It doesn't matter if you're wrong. I'll give you about 10 seconds because you might be typing it now. I don't want to do that, but you might get it. No, it's okay. Don't worry about it. So, the Umayyad started a practice cursing the family of Banu Hashim, the family of Ali bin Abi Talib, on the khutbah. I wonder how many of you guys how many of you were aware of that? The Umayyads, I'll say that once again, just so people aren't shocked and think I've misspoken or, inebriated or anything like that. The Umayyads started the practice of cursing the house of Banu Hashim on the Friday khutbah. So when we get up and we go to the khutbah in Jum'ah, we hear all these wonderful things. Arhamu ummati bi ummati Abu Bakr wa ashadduhum fi amrillahi Umar wa qadahum وأصدقهم حياء وعثمان وقضاهم علي والحسن والحسين سيدا شباب أهل الجنة, leaders of the house of the men of Jannah. The Umayyads some of them used to curse the house of Ali ibn Abi Talib, curse Ali, curse Hassan, curse Hussein on the minbar of the Friday khutbah. Yeah, can you believe that? How shocking is that? So then, someone called Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, who some of you may be aware of, he's an Umayyad Caliph who comes later. He stopped that. Okay? He stopped it. He said, no one should be doing this, cursing Ali ibn Abi Talib and his family on it. Okay, and so he introduced this into the khutbah. Inna Allah ya'muru bil adli. Allah commands you with justice. Yeah, wa ita'i dhil qurba, and to keep good, keep close your relatives. Wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkar, and he prohibits you saying bad fahsha, bad things. It's in direct relation to when the Umayyads would curse Ali ibn Abi Talib. So that's wow. So yeah, that comes to the end of today, inshallah. So we've covered today a lot. Jazakallah for your patience and for mashallah, really good questions, really good interaction. I really appreciate it. We've got one more next week, inshallah, and that one, inshallah, finish it. Is there any last questions? Feel free just to jump in, just say it, just type it, whatever you like. Great list. No, jazakallah for coming, Brother Shari. I appreciate it. I hope as well you're kind of getting a bit of different perspective on history. Any wider reading sources? Yes. What I will do is I will edit this PowerPoint and I'll put the sources in the end, and then I will send that to you. Okay. I'll send that to you, inshallah. May Allah reward you as well, mashallah. May Allah reward you and accept you all coming as well, inshallah. Barakallahu feek. I think we're at 1 o'clock, aren't we? Yeah, I wanted to make sure we do things. Okay, that's fine, inshallah. Jazakallah. No, honestly, just Yahya, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, I will shut my screen and I will let you guys go then. Jazakallah for coming, inshallah. May Allah bless you all. May you enjoy the rest of your weekend, inshallah. And I'll see you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.